Okay, so to start with, you need to make sure you have your photos. In this case, I'm going to be using 3 since I have 2 different elements that I want to combine into the first or into one photo. And then also you may need to make sure that you have a clean plate with no subjects in it. So here's the first one, here's the second one, and then here's the clean plate. Now to get started, you need to select all of them in Lightroom. And you can also just open these straight in Photoshop, but since I'm going from Lightroom to Photoshop, you just select them in Lightroom, hit Edit in, and then open as layers in Photoshop. But now that we're here in Photoshop, we have our 3 layers. We have the top one, we have the subject on the left, subject on the right, and then our clean plate. Now I'm going to show you guys how to do the masking on one of them, since once you kind of know how to do it on one, you can do it on everything, or on both of them. So for this first one, I'm going to make sure I have this selected, and I'm going to go down here and create a mask for it. And then with the mask selected, I'm going to hit B for brush, and I'm going to make sure I'm on my default colors, and I want black as my foreground color. Now I'm also going to make sure that my brush settings are all good. I want the hardness somewhere around there, so that way it's a little bit feathered, but not too much. And then we can zoom in. And then wherever we paint with black is where it's going to disappear. So whenever you're working with a mask, white is what you can see and black is what is hidden. So if I go ahead and paint with black, we can see that it's getting rid of my arm. Now once you kind of start doing this, you can go in and you can get a pretty rough mask going. And also don't worry about the color, we'll fix that in a little bit. But right now you should work on the mask, so I'm going to go in and fine tune this mask a little bit more. Alright, so now you can see that we've gone ahead and used the mask to get rid of this part of the image, which is my arm. Now you can also see that the coloring is not right, but we will go back and fix that in a little bit. But in order to set up to do that, I'm going to go ahead and convert these bottom 2 layers to smart objects. Now the reason I'm doing that is because I'm going to be applying the camera raw filter, and once if you apply a filter to a smart object, you can always go back in and adjust that filter once you've applied it. If it's just a regular rasterized layer, you can't edit the filter once you've applied it. So we want to use smart objects so we can go back in and edit them whenever we need to. Alright, so now we have these 2 as smart objects. I'm going to go back up here to the mask, and we want to change the mask on this image to allow this part of the next image to show through. So if I go here, go to the brush, I'm going to make it bigger, and I'm just going to paint in black where I know my hand is. And like I said, it can be very rough. This is just a kind of starting point. Now, once I get closer to where the tea bag is, I'm going to go in a little bit more fine-tuned and kind of fix that. So that way it looks like the tea bag is actually going into the mug. Now we're left with this. And as you can see, if we turn off this top image, we just got that. But then if we turn off the bottom 2, this is what this top layer looks like right now with the mask. And then if we turn this back on, we can see that this second layer fills in the gaps. Now I'm going to go in here, create a mask, and basically just do the same thing on this layer as I did to right here. So we're going to go in and remove my right arm, And I'm going to go through this process kind of fast since you've already seen me do it once. Now see right here, I accidentally went a little bit too close with the mask, so I'm going to hit X on my keyboard to switch between the colors right here. So you can see I'm just hitting X, and we want to paint with white to get part of that layer back. So if you ever mess up, just know you can switch between your two colors. Alright, so now you can see I've gone ahead and gotten rid of that, but it's blank, and that's because this layer is turned off. So if we turn that on, you can see it fills in the gap. So now you can see we basically have all of our masking done. It's just now we have to go back and do some color correction because I accidentally put my white balance on auto on my camera instead of setting it to 1 and then keeping it. So that means that we have to go back in and apply a camera raw filter so we can change the the white balance to match the other images. So as you can see, this top image, if we look over here at the bottom of this thing right here, you can see it's a little bit warmer than the others. So I'm going to go in here, and I'm going to go to Filter, Camera Raw Filter. And I'm just going to make it a little bit warmer, and I'm going to add a little bit more pink to it. But I'm also going to decrease the exposure a little bit because by adding some orange temperature to it, it's going to make it brighter. So I'm just going to make it a tad bit darker, and if we hit OK, we can now look and see it's getting closer. But you can also see we need a little bit more of the pink tones. Now because it's a smart object, we can go back in and double click on it and we can edit it. So I'm going to give it a little bit more pink, see how that does. So that's pretty close. I think it needs to be a little bit warmer. Just a tad. So now you can see it matches a lot better. You can see if we turn the smart filter on and off, so you see the difference. Now also it's a little bit bright, so I'm going to take the exposure down just a tiny bit. And now you can see it matches even better. You can't even tell the difference. So now that we did it with that one, we need to go up here and do that exact same thing with this bottom image. All right, so now you can see that we've got all of our color correction done, but as I'm looking at it, I can see there's a little bit of a weird spot right here, and that's with this mask. So if we hold down Shift and click on the mask, we can disable the mask, and you can see that's the problem. So to fix that, I'm going to go in with my brush, and I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. And also to change the size of your brush, you can hit the bracket keys on your keyboard. The right one makes it bigger, left one makes it smaller. So make it a little bit bigger, and I'm going to turn the opacity down to probably about 40% and make sure that my hardness is down. Now the reason I'm doing that is because I'm going to go in right here on this mask and I'm going to paint with black just on the edge where the mask ends, just to kind of soften the transition. I'm going to turn the opacity down a little bit, and you can see how that's just barely affecting the mask, but it's helping to ease the transition between the two color temperatures. And I can even go down a little bit farther and do a little bit down here so it kind of bleeds in a little bit more. So that way it looks more of a seamless transition. So now you can also see that by doing that, we got a little bit of lag on the camera, but not on the camera, sorry, the computer. That's okay, that'll go away. That's just kind of there as it's rendering. But as I'm looking at it now, it looks like this area might be just a little bit too light. So I'm going to go in here. Because it's a smart object, I can go in and edit it. And I'm going to take the exposure to maybe -37 and see what that does. And see if that just ties it in. So now we've masked all of our hands out. But let's see. Yeah, so everything looks all right. If we turn each layer off, we can see what each layer is doing. Now, to really sell this effect, I'm going to go in and I'm going to mess with the shadows. Now on this first mask, this first layer, you can see we have our shadow for the glove right here and the mug right here, but we also have a shadow for my hand or my arm. So I'm going to go into the mask and I'm going to paint with black and I'm going to paint that mask away. But make sure your opacity is back up, and you can zoom in by hitting Command plus. Command minus is to zoom out. And I'm just going to paint away that shadow. Now I want to make sure my brush is kept pretty soft so I can ease the transition between the shadow of the glove and the shadow of my arm. And you can see that looks like the glove is just kind of there. I might round it out a little bit more to make it look more realistic, and there we go. So now on here we can see also that this layer is covering up the mask, or sorry, the shadow for the right glove. So I'm going to go in, and on this layer I'm going to paint with black and just bring that shadow back in. Now we're going to kind of run into an issue right here. So as you can see, it's not really working. To get around that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate this layer, which has my right hand, by hitting Command J. And I'm going to bring it to the top. And now as you can see, it's gotten rid of everything that we've done because it's on top. To get all that back, I'm going to hit the brush, make it really big, and with the mask selected, I'm just going to paint black back in to bring everything back into our scene. But now you can see I can kind of ease that transition between the two shadows by doing something like this, and then you can see it's a little bit better. Now the other thing with this is I might only want it for the shadow, so I'm going to paint with black around everything else. So if you look on the mask, I'm basically wanting the only thing to be showing right here is that shadow. So if you look on the mask, you can see everywhere it's black, nothing's showing. Where it's white, it is showing, and I only want it to show in that little corner. I might go in here and take it out right there. So now as you can see, the only thing we have is the shadow. But I'm going to do a little bit of color correction because as you can see, these shadows look a little bit lighter and almost a little bit more purple. So I'm going to go in here to the camera raw filter, and because it's a smart object, we can go in and edit it, and I'm going to bring in more purple to it, if my camera will load. And let's just go ahead and see what that looks like. So you can see it's a little bit too much, but we can also go back into the mask settings, and we can kind of fine-tune the mask a little bit. The other thing that I find helps with this is turning the opacity down, so that way you can kind of match how intense the shadow is. Now I'm looking at it, now it looks a little bit too dark. So let's bring the exposure up. Let's see what that looks like. So you can see we're already beginning to match it a little bit better. Maybe it's a little bit too purple now. Let's dial the purple back. And as you can see, now it matches almost perfectly. So now that we've done all that, I'm just going to hit Command S, which saves it. And because I'm working between Lightroom and Photoshop, I'm able to go back into Lightroom. And as you can see, it's created a new file with my edited photo. Now from here I just go in, I like to do a little bit of color correction. So to do this I like to use presets. I'm going to use the Peter McKinnon preset. I'm going to use Pirate Life as a starter. It's a little bit dark, so I'm going to bring up the shadows. I'm going to make it a little bit cooler. Now also what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply a color profile. So I'm going to use A Quiet Place as my color profile because that kind of has like a horror vibe to it. And I'm going to bring the intensity down a little bit. And then I'm just going to go through and do my basic editing. And then if I want to make detailed changes, so say I want the gloves to have less shadow and I want it to be a little bit brighter, I can go in here to this brush adjustment and I can paint where I want this adjustment to be. So I'm just going to paint all over the glove. And then if we go in here and up the shadows, you can see it's only affecting that glove. And as you can see now, if I go through, that's what it looks like before, and that's after the adjustment. So I might do a little one on this glove, and that's basically it. The last touch that I like to add is a little vignette. So I'm going to draw a circular mask, rotate it to match the gloves, expand it a little bit, and I'm just going to take the shadows down. I'm going to invert it and feather it a little bit. So as you can see, that might be a little bit too much. So I'm going to back it off a little bit, take it up, and there you can see that's what it looks like when we just brought it in, and that's after a little bit of color correction and editing. I hope this helps. Now you know how I do these glove photos.